Good morning, class. Welcome to reading this week. We made our social studies assignments a little bit lighter and quicker this week so we could spend a little bit more time with reading. Our goal this week is to read this Christmas story. It's called The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. Now, I sent these books home with you. They're in your Monday packets. Each day, switch them over to the next packet, and then, when it's done, put them back into your envelopes and send them back. I'm still missing a few books from the books I sent home earlier in the year. Then I stopped sending books home. But you'll need these books to be able to do your assignments. Here's today's assignment. It looks like a little multiple choice assignment. Chapter 1, Chapter 2 is our goal. Then this assignment's in your Monday packet, but it says all week. So this one's just going to move from packet to packet to packet. As we get done with Chapter 1, we'll find out the definitions of these words. Chapter 2, these, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. On the back, we're going to try to make a little story map here, the title, the author, character, setting, problem, and the solution as the week goes on. Now, if you look in your packet, you might have a book that has this little angel on the front, looking pretty excited, The Best Christmas Pageant Ever. A lot of your books in your packet will look like this, The Best, notice they crossed out worst, Christmas Pageant Ever. This is a picture of Imogen Herdman, the main character in our story. Barbara Robinson is the author of this. I'm going to do a lot of reading. I'd like you to follow along as I read. You're also welcome to have your sheets close by if we stop to fill out an answer, or if we come by the word pageant, or any of the rest of these words here, you can take the definitions of them at that time. Okay, let's get the idea of what this story is going to be about. The Herdmans are the worst kids in the history of the world. They lie, they steal, they smoke cigars, they swear, and hit little kids. So no one is prepared when this outlaw family invades church one Sunday and decides to take over the annual Christmas pageant. None of the Herdmans has ever heard of the Christmas story before. Their interpretation of the tale, the wise men are a bunch of dirty spies and Herod needs a good beating, has a lot of people up in arms. That means angry. But it will make this year's pageant the most unusual anyone has ever seen, and just possibly the best one ever. Okay, so now we have to set the ground rules here. First of all, these Herdmans are bad news. And they do all sorts of things that we would never, ever, ever accept from any of our kids. Okay, so just because these kids do that does not mean it's a great idea for you to do it. It is just a fiction story. It's a fiction story. All right, some of the words in the story I will skip over. Okay, so if they say a bad word that obviously we can't have, I will skip right over and I'll make it into a good word. Unfortunately, sometimes authors put bad things in the story that are of this world, and they don't really match up with our belief system. However, the ending of the story is so important. That's why we chose to read this story to you guys, and it's at Christmas time. So there's going to be a lot of funny parts in this story. There's going to be some little shady parts. The kids do some really bad things because they just don't have a lot of people in their lives that are taking care of them. And at the end, they're going to come 180 degrees, turn around from the worst kids to these awesome kids who put on this awesome pageant. Even though it's a little bit different, it may be the worst or best Christmas pageant ever. Chapter 1, our goal today is 1 and 2. It'll take us a little bit longer. I'm going to pause in between them so that you get a chance to take a break. The Herdmans were absolutely the worst kids in the history of the world. They lie and stole and smoked cigars, even the girls, and talked dirty and hit little kids and cussed their teachers and took the name of the Lord in vain and set fire to Fred Shoemaker's old, broken down tool house. The tool house burned right down to the ground, and I think that surprised the Herdmans. They set fire to things all the time. But that was the first time they managed to burn down the whole building. I don't know if you guys have any of this in your neighborhood. There's a couple garages in my neighborhood that look like they're about to fall down. And if you'd light a match in there, they may be burned to the ground really easy. I guess it was an accident. I don't suppose they woke up that morning and said to one another, let's go burn down Fred Shoemaker's tool house. But maybe they did after all. It was Saturday and not much was going on. It was a terrific fire. 2 engines, fire engines, and 2 police cars, and all the volunteer firemen
and 5 dozen donuts sent up from the tasty lunch dinner. The donuts were supposed to be for the firemen, but by the time they got the fire out, the donuts were all gone. The herdmen's got them. What they couldn't eat, they stuffed in their pockets and down the front of their shirts. You could actually see the donuts all around Ollie Erdman's middle. I couldn't understand why the herdmans were hanging around the scene of their crime. Everyone knew the whole thing was their fault, and you'd think that they would have brains to get out of sight. One fireman even collared Claude Herdman and said, "Did you kids start this fire smoking cigars in the tool house?" But Claude just said, "We weren't smoking cigars." So in other words, he didn't say they didn't start the fire. He just said, "We weren't smoking cigars." And they weren't. They were playing with Leroy Herdman's Young Einstein chemistry set, which he stole from the hardware store, and that's how they started the fire. Now, back when I was a young kid, they had these chemistry sets for sale at either hardware stores or on book order forms, and then you could get these little things, and you're supposed to mix this and mix that, and it was supposed to make a little bubbly ooze or something, and, well, they decided to take it too far and to start a fire. Leroy said so. "We mixed all the little powders together," he said, "and poured lighter fluid around on them and set fire to the lighter fluid. We wanted to see if the chemistry set was any good." Any other kid, even a mean kid, would have been a little bit worried if he stole $4.95 worth of something and then burned down a building with it. But Leroy was just mad because the chemistry set got burned up along with everything else before he had a chance to make 1 or 2 bombs. The fire chief got us all together. There were 15 or 20 kids standing around watching the fire and gave us a little talk about playing with matches and gasoline and dangerous things like that. Don't play with matches. Don't burn things down. "I don't say that's what happened here," he told us. "I don't know what happened here, but that could have been it, and you could see the result. So let this be a good lesson to you boys and girls." Of course, it was a good lesson to the Herdmans. They learned that whenever there was a fire, there'd be free donuts sooner or later. I guess things would have been different if they burned down, say, the Second Presbyterian Church instead of the tool house, but the tool house was about to fall down anyways. All the neighbors had pestered Mr. Shoemaker to do something about it because it looked so awful and was sure to bring rats. So everybody said that the fire was a blessing in disguise, and even Mr. Shoemaker said it was a relief. My father said it was the only good thing the Herdmans ever did, and if they'd known it was a good thing, they wouldn't have done it at all. They would have set fire to something else, or somebody. Of course, that's just a joke, but they're mean, so they were just so all-around awful, you could hardly believe they were real. Ralph. Now, these guys are the guys in order. Ralph's the oldest. Imogen, Leroy, Claude, Ollie, and Gladys. 6 skinny, stringy-haired kids, all alike except for being different sizes and having different black and blue places where they had clonked each other. They lived over a garage at the bottom of Sprawl Hill. Now, some houses have these big garages where you park below, and then up above is this fancy room. And then sometimes this room above, you would rent it out. So if you owned a nice house and you had a detached garage and a room above it, you would often rent that room above it out to somebody. So that's where they lived. Nobody used the garage anymore, but the Herdmans used to bang the door up and down just as fast as they could to try to squash one another. That was their idea of a game. Where other people had grass in their front yard, the Herdmans had rocks. And where people had hydrangeas, now that's like a fancy bush that has flowers on it, hydrangea bushes, the Herdman had poison ivy. There was also a sign in the yard that said, "Beware of the cat." Oh, cats are so cute and cuddly and soft. I don't know why you have to beware of a cat. I'm beware of a dog, but a cat? New kids always laughed about that till they got a look at the cat. It was the meanest looking animal I ever saw. It had one short leg and a broken tail and a missing eye, and the mailman wouldn't deliver anything to the Herdman because of it. "I don't think it's a regular cat at all," the mailman told my father. "I think those kids went up in the hills and they caught themselves a bobcat." Now, a bobcat would be pretty scary. This thing is so mean the mailman thinks it's a bobcat. Now, mailmen are oftentimes afraid of dogs and things like that when they deliver the mail, but not usually cats. But this one, oh, I don't think you can tame a wild bobcat, my father said. I'm sure you can't, the mailman said. They'll never try to tame it. They just try to make it wilder than it was to begin with. If that was their plan, it worked. The cat would attack anything it could see out of its one eye. One day, Claude Herdman emptied the whole first grade in 3 minutes flat when he took the cat to show and tell. Could you imagine taking a cat to show and tell? He didn't feed it for 2 days, so it was already mad, and then he carried it to school in a box. Now, I can imagine if you put a cat in a box, it would be mad. And when he opened the box, the cat shot out straight up into the air, people said. It came down on top of a blackboard ledge and clawed 4 big, long scratches all the way down the blackboard. Then it just tore around all over the place, scratching little kids and shedding fur and scattering books and papers everywhere. The teacher, Mrs. Brandel, yelled for everyone to run out to the hallway. And she pulled a coat over her head and grabbed a broom and tried to corner the cat. But of course she couldn't see with the coat over her head. So she just ran up and down the aisles hollering, "Here, kitty, 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 kitty!" and smacking the broom down whenever the cat hissed back. She knocked over the Happy Family dollhouse and a globe of the world. She broke the aquarium full of 20 gallons of water and about 65 goldfish. Now, can you imagine the scene? You got to visualize this. She knocked over this big, huge goldfish tank, 20 gallons. That'd be like 20 gallons of milk, all over the floor with goldfish flipping and flopping everywhere. Now, I don't know if you know, but cats love fish. I wonder what's going to happen next. All the time, she kept yelling for Claude to come and catch his cat, but Claude had gone out in the hallway with the rest of the class. Later, when Mrs. Brandel was slapping Band-Aids on everyone who could show her any blood, she asked Claude, "Why in the world didn't you come and get that cat under control?" "You told us to go into the hallway," Claude said, just as if he was an ordinary kind of first grader who did whatever the teacher said to do. The cat settled down a little bit once he got something to eat. Most of the goldfish and Ramona Billion's 2 pet mice that she brought for show and tell. Oh, that's really sad. Ramona cried and carried on, so I can't even bury them, she said. That they sent her home. The room was a wreck. Broken glass and papers and books and puddles of water and dead goldfish everywhere. Mrs. Brandel was sort of a wreck too, and most of the first graders were hysterical. So somebody took them outdoors and let them have recess for the rest of the day. Claude took the cat home, and after that there was a rule that you couldn't bring anything alive to show and tell. The herdman moves from grade to grade through Woodrow Wilson School like those South American fish that stripped your bones clean in 3 minutes flat. Now those fish are actually called piranhas, which was just about what they did to one teacher after another. But they never got back in the grade. Never got kept back in the grade. When it came time for Claude Herdman to pass to the second grade, he didn't know the ABCs, or his numbers, or colors, or shapes, or his 3 bears, whatever that means, or how to get along with anybody. But Mrs. Brandel passed him anyways. For one thing, she knew she'd have Ollie Herdman the next year. That was the thing about the Herdmans. There was always another one coming along, and no teacher was crazy enough to let herself have 2 of them at once. I was always in the same grade with Imogen. Now we first hear this I here. So the story is being told by somebody, we don't know who. First person point of view. We'll get introduced to her later, but right now she just calls herself I. I was always in the same grade with Imogen Herdman. And what I did was stay out of her way. It wasn't easy to stay out of her way. You couldn't do it if you were very pretty, or very ugly, or very smart, or very dumb, or had anything unusual about you, like red hair or double-jointed thumbs. But if you were just a sort of medium kid like me, and you kept your mouth shut when the teacher said, "Who can name all 50 states?" you have a pretty good chance to stay clear of Imogen. As far as anyone could tell, Imogen was just like the rest of the Herdmans. She never learned anything either, except dirty words and secrets about everybody. Twice a year we had to go to the health room to get weighed and measured, and Imogen always managed to find out exactly what everybody weighed. Sometimes she would hang around waiting for the nurse, Mrs. Hemphill, to give her a Band-Aid. Sometimes she would sneak behind the curtain where they kept a folding cot and just stay there the whole time, and with one eye on the scale. "Why are you still here, Imogen?" Miss Hemphill asked one day. "You can go back to your room now. I think you better look to see if I've got what Ollie has." "What does Ollie have?" Imogen shrugged. "We don't know. Red spots all over." Now, when this book was written, red spots all over probably meant you had chicken pox. Chicken pox were pretty common at this time. Now we get a little shot so we don't get chicken pox. But if you have chicken pox, they're very contagious and you couldn't go to school. It was kind of strange. All my brothers and sisters got chicken pox and they couldn't go to school, but I never got them. Miss Hemphill looked at her. "What did the doctor say?" "We don't have a doctor," Imogen began, scratching her back up and down against the medicine cabinet. "Well, does Ollie have a fever? Is he in bed?" "No, he's in first grade." "Right now?" Miss Hemphill stared. "Why, he shouldn't be in school with red spots. It could be the measles or chicken pox or any number of things. Contagious things." "What are you doing?" "I'm scratching my back," Imogen said. "Boy, do I itch." Now, chicken pox make you itch. "The rest of you boys and girls go back to your room," Miss Hemphill said. "And Imogen, you stay right here." So we all went back to our room, and Miss Hemphill went to first grade to look at Ollie. Imogen stayed in the health room and copied down everybody's weight from Miss Hemphill's records. Your weight was supposed to be a big secret, like what you got on your report card. It's nobody's business what you get on your report card, all the teachers said, and Miss Hemphill said the same thing. It's nobody's business what you weigh. Not even the fat kids could find out what they weighed, but Imogen, she always knew. "Don't let Albert Pelfrey on the swing," she would yell at recess. "He'll bust it. Albert Pelfrey weighs 143 pounds. Last time he weighed 137. So right away everyone knew two things about Albert. We knew exactly how fat he was, and we also knew that he was getting fatter all the time. Now, of course, this is supposed to be kind of funny, and this is supposed to point that Imogen is really, really super mean, but of course this is nothing that we would ever do or we think is funny. So we're continuing to read this book. It's got some things in it that just shows how mean these kids are, but we'll get to the good part of the Christmas story. Just hold tight. "You have to go to Fat Camp this summer," Imogen hollered at him. Miss Hemphill wrote it down on your paper. "Fat Camp is a place where they feed you lettuce and grapefruit and cottage cheese and eggs for a month, and you either give up and cheat or give up and get skinny." "I am not," Albert said. "I'm going to Disneyland with my Uncle Frank." "That's what you think," Imogen told him. Albert had to believe her. She was always right about things like that. So all year he had Fat Camp to look forward to instead of Disneyland. Sometimes Imogen would blackmail the fat kids if they had anything she wanted, like Wanda Pierce charm bracelet. Wanda Pierce weighed about a ton. She even had bigger eyes, and her hobby was this charm bracelet. It had 22 charms, and every single one did something. The little wheels turned, or the little bitty piano keys went plink, or the little tiny drawers opened and closed. Besides being a bigger kid, Wanda was also a rich kid, so every time you turned around she had a new charm. "Look at my new charm," she would say. "It costs $6.95 without tax. It's a bird, and when you push the little knob, its wings flutter. It costs $6.95. They were great charms, but everybody got so sick of hearing about them. So it was almost a relief when Imogen blackmailed her out of it. Now, blackmail means, I'm going to tell somebody something about you unless you give me something. "I know how much you weigh, Wendell," Imogen told her. "I wrote it down on this piece of paper. See? It must have been an awful amount because even Wendell looked horrified." So Imogen got her charm bracelet, and she got Lucille Golden's imitation alligator pocketbook, which was a souvenir from Florida, written on it. For a while, she got 10 cents a week from Floyd Brush, till Floyd caught double pneumonia and lost 15 pounds and didn't care anymore. My friend Alice Wendelkin was so nasty clean that she had detergent hands by the time she was 4 years old. Just the same, Alice picked up the case of the head lice when she was at summer camp, and somehow Imogene found out about that. She would sneak up on Alice at recess and holler, "Cooties!" and smack Alice's head. She nearly knocked Alice cross-eyed before one of the teachers saw her and took both of them to the principal. Now what's this about, the principal wanted to know, but Alice wouldn't say. I had to hit her, Imogene told him. She's got cooties, and I saw one crawling on her hair, and I didn't want them on me. You did not see one, Alice said. I don't have them any more. What do you mean you don't have them anymore? The principal said. Did you have them lately? It really shook him up. He didn't want the whole school full of kids with cooties. So he sent Alice to the health room, and the nurse went through her hair with a fine-tooth comb and magnifying glass, and finally she said it was all right. But it was too late. Everybody called Alice Cooties the whole rest of the year. If Imogene didn't know a secret about a person, she would make one up. She would catch you in the girls' room or in the hall and whisper, "I know what you did." And then you go crazy trying to figure out what you had did that Imogene knew about. It was no good trying to get a secret out of the Herdmans. Everybody already knew about the awful things they did. You couldn't even tease them about their parents or holler, "Your father's in jail," because they didn't care. Actually, they didn't know what their father was or where he was or anything about him, because when Gladys was 2 years old, he climbed on a railroad train and he disappeared and nobody blamed him. Now and then you'd see Mrs. Herdman walking the cat on a leash of chain around the block, but she worked double shifts at the shoe factory and wasn't home much. My mother's friend, Miss Phillips, was a social service worker, and she tried to get some welfare money for the Herdmans, so Mrs. Herdman could just work one shift and spend more time with her children. But Mrs. Herdman wouldn't do it. She liked the work, she said. It's not the work, Mrs. Phillips told my mother. It's not the money. It's just that she'd rather be in the shoe factory than shut up in the home with a crowd of kids. She sighed. I can't say I blame her. So they don't have a dad, and the mom's always working. So the Herdmans pretty much looked after themselves. Ralph, he's the oldest, looked after Imogene. Imogene looked after Leroy, and Leroy looked after Claude, and Claude, and so on down the line. The Herdmans were like most big families. The big ones taught the little ones everything they knew, and the proof was that the meanest Herdman of all was Gladys, the youngest. We figured they were headed straight for a not good place by the way of the state penitentiary until they got themselves mixed up with the church and my mother and our Christmas pageant. Glad we're done with chapter 1. Talks about all the bad things they had to do, but now we'll start to get to the good part, the Christmas pageant. We're going to take chapter 2 yet today on another video.